down to Biscayne.
Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're now on Red Circle as well as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Also catch us on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. You get more than just Heat content there. You get plenty of Panthers content in the Stanley Cup Finals. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Also check out 5reasonsports.com for the latest articles without a paywall from Brady Hawk and one of our guests today, Mateo Mayorga. So check that out. Writing just about every day there on the website. We believe we're giving you as much content as anybody in the market or in the country at this point. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Our guy, Mark Delacruz, he's been a little bit nervous throughout these series, but the Heat are in the finals, and you should go check him out. He's at ubreakwheelfix.com. That's ubreak with a U at the start, ubreakwheelfix.com. We know in South Florida, the roads are not so great. You get the curb rash, you get all kinds of different problems with it. Get the repairs, but also get the refinishing there. You can get the Heat colors or any of the other colors that you want there. It's a complete automotive wheel solution. U-Brake Wheel Fix, again, specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash, or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. Check them out, ubreakwheelfix.com or ubreakwheelfix on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. The phone number, 305-748-0112. That's 305-748-0112. Reach out to Mark just south of Aventura. Don't worry, you don't get caught in that traffic there. Just make sure you get your car there and get the job done right. ubreakwheelfix.com. Mention 5 Reasons, and you get a discount. And now, today's episode. All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow me at Greg Sylvander. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. And actually, I'm in the same city as this guy for about the third time, I believe. Usually it's been in Miami, though. I just got out to Denver. But Mateo Mayorga beat me out here because he lives here. So he got out to the availabilities today of the Heat and the Nuggets. So you can follow him at Mateo Mayorga 23, and again, follow his work at 5reasonsports.com. 2-part episode today. We're going to download Mateo. I want to find out everything that happened there as the Heat and the Nuggets. I cannot believe this is actually happening. The Heat had another NBA Finals media day. I went to so many of these. I'm kind of disappointed I missed this one. But they had yet another media day for an NBA Finals. Their 7th NBA Finals now. The Nuggets went first. So we're going to download him on everything that happened today. And the second part of this episode, we're going to make a case for why people should watch this series. We know Heat fans are watching it, but why the rest of the country should watch it too. So let's start, Mateo. Let's start with the Nuggets, actually, because here was my takeaway just from reading your tweets. They're not as arrogant as the other teams that the Heat have faced in the playoffs. Now, you've been around this team a little bit this year. You follow this team more closely than I do. But Jokic seemed pretty humble for a guy who's won 2 MVPs, probably should have won 3. Jamal Murray talked very positively about them. Mike Malone has given the Heat incredible credit for what they've done, talked about how this is going to be their toughest series. Are Heat fans even going to be able to dislike this team by the end of it? Because it doesn't feel like they're going to build up the healthy hatred that they had for the Bucks, the Knicks, or mostly the Celtics.
You know, I think it will be very difficult to root against the Denver Nuggets for people who are outside of Miami. And, I think some Miami people might even turn sympathetic towards them, because one of the biggest things I noticed was neither squad is giving the other bulletin board material. It's just constant respect in each press room in reference to the other team. But, when you look at the characters from both squads, specifically, the Nuggets, like Jamal Murray, he's someone who April 13th, 2021, he tore his ACL. There were considerations to trade. Well, there was speculation about trading him. The organization didn't do that. And, the relationship got very strong with him and Coach Mike Malone, because the organization gave him space to, recover on his timeline. And this season, he returned. There were moments where he didn't look like himself, but he certainly played his way back to form in the playoffs. He had games against the Lakers where in a half he scored like 30 points, in another half he scored like 22 in a separate game. And there's someone like Nikola Jokic. He's not from here. He's from Serbia. He's one of possibly the best player in the world. And he is unguardable. He can do so many different things, be as a playmaker. And he can also be the best scorer in the world if he wants to, kind of like, LeBron, how he could do everything or anything he wanted to on one side of the ball. You find yourself rooting for these guys because, they're not full of themselves. They got serious game. It's the first time the Nuggets have been to an NBA finals, not a finals, because in 76, the Nuggets played in the ABA finals, but, it's been a long time coming for this team. And, even Spoelstra said in the press conference that he expected or anticipated the Nuggets to have been here at least multiple times if Jamal Murray didn't get hurt. So it's just constant respect. Mute, I think.
Oh, probably would have gotten there a couple of years ago. So who's the villain going to be? Because right, I mean, Greg, I'll go to you on this. Like, who is it going to be? Because you look at their rotation. Okay, Heat fans don't have much love for Aaron Gordon because of the silliness with Dwayne Wade. Is that the only option? It's not KCP, right? They're not going to root against Bruce Brown. I mean, Bruce Brown is a Miami product. He went to University of Miami.
We're one dust up away. That's what it boils down to from a fan base perspective. Because these guys you're not going to dislike them as human beings, particularly when they're up talking to the media. I thought all the guys on Miami side did a great job today. There were a lot of great sound bites that came out of today. But I think it's going to come down to on the court. If all of a sudden you see something get physical and two guys go square up, like that could be the start of a villain story, right? Like, but I don't think we're going into game one with a villain story yet.
Yeah, there's no Lance Stevenson on these rosters. There's nobody that you just point to and say, okay, that's the guy that the Heat players and fans will be calling, as Ray Allen famously called him, a nincompoop during the playoffs. You're not going to have that kind of stuff. Let's pivot over to the Heat side a little bit then, and then again we'll get to the reasons to watch this series. I feel like the most interesting thing that came out, Greg, you put it on our off the floor feed, wasn't something that necessarily was said in Jimmy Butler's presser today, because we've heard a lot of that when I saw the quotes. But him saying that this is the last uniform that he's ever going to wear, which I guess is something he told, was that Rachel Nichols or Malika Andrews?
Malika Andrews on Sports Center. Yeah, they had an exclusive interview.
Okay, so look, I don't think that's a huge surprise. We've been saying that all along. I even asked Jimmy during the season about playing to a certain age, and he said he's done after this contract, which we'll see, because guys change their mind at that point. Particularly if they haven't accomplished exactly what they want to accomplish. But it does seem like Jimmy kind of is off to the south of France, or to go play tennis somewhere, or to Colombia or Argentina or Peru or somewhere. Okay, that he
all of the above,
all of the above, and he'll find some other way to compete. Because the thing about Jimmy is, we talk about guys has trouble after basketball, particularly somebody as competitive as Jimmy, who's hyper competitive, finding an outlet for it. Jimmy's not going to go play a lot of golf, but which is what a lot of the guys do. But the thing is, he finds everything to compete in. Like, he'll compete in dominoes, so he'll figure out ways to compete. He'll compete in his coffee business for how much he can charge. Like, that's the way that he is. But I do think him definitively saying this is the last uniform, because he doesn't have to say that, right? No. Like most stars of this era, they leave their options open. Even at Dame Lillard, some of the guys who've stayed in the places they've stayed, the Bradley Beal, there's then this little glimmer of something. There's nothing with Jimmy. And I've said that, and I can tell you flat out, conversations with his agent over the past 2 years, he said, Jimmy's never leaving. He's told me that repeatedly. He's never leaving SPO. He's never leaving this organization, because they believed in him. But for him to say it definitively, I don't know if most of the country expected that.
I think it's a huge I don't know if you were going to Mateo there, so I'm diving in.
I'm going to you, because then I'm pivoting back to the Nuggets.
Great. Perfect. So there's a few things I want to sneak in here, because there was more than just the uniform soundbite where he said, that's the last jersey I'm ever going to wear. I thought it was super cool that he brought up Dwayne Wade again and his influence getting him to Miami. It's like such an assist to hear that coming from Dwayne, saying how he wants to be like Dwayne Wade for a day or hit a game-winning shot. Just all of that stuff. I think it brings up the right kind of feels for Heat fans. And it's just another example There's also one thing got to sneak this in. Duncan and Max both straight up saying that the altitude was not going to bother them at all. I thought that could be the little bit of controversy that comes out of day one, but the Jimmy stuff was just super positive.
I'm going to see if the altitude bothers me at about 1 a.m. tonight, because it might take a few days to adjust to. But getting back to Jimmy on that, we did a podcast. I don't think you were on it. You may not have been with us at that point. I think Alf and I did it the day that he was introduced in 2019. And it was basically like, I think Alf called it like soft porn for Heat fans, like his initial press conference, where he said everything that you would want a guy to say. And I said the same thing. I got out of that, I'm like, oh my God, he hit that out of the park. Like, we were not expecting that from Jimmy at that time. We didn't know what to expect. He tends to know which buttons to push, but I do feel when he gets into that kind of serious subject and he puts himself on the record like that, he means it. But I do want to go back to you, Mateo, on this, because the other, storyline from a narrative perspective here, and you touched on it, is the Jokic thing, where I don't know that we've seen this in a long time, where you have a guy who is, to me, pretty clearly the best player, best offensive player in the league now. I think you can make a case for Giannis. I cannot make a case for Embiid, because he does not come through when it matters the most. And so I can't go there with him. Even though he was the MVP, I don't think he should have been this year. I think you and I discussed it before the season. You had Jokic. But we haven't really had a situation where it's like a 2-time MVP and a near 3-time MVP has to be introduced to the country. It's sort of ridiculous. Like even the guys who were MVPs who, we look back and we're like, okay, he wasn't the most dominant player in the league, like a Nash, okay, or won it a couple times in a row, and won it over Kobe, won it over Shaq those 2 years, or even David Robinson was well known to the country when he won MVP, right? Admiral and waiting the 2 years. Akeem won championships and MVP, but wasn't. I don't know that he commanded the spotlight like maybe some others did. But to me, this is unprecedented, isn't it? Like it's like people are going to be watching this guy for the first time this week. He's won 2 MVP awards.
I think when people say that the Nuggets are boring or that Nikola Jokic is not a captivating player, these are people that very clearly do not have a subscription to a Denver newspaper. They can't be watching the Nuggets more than when they were on national TV. And I remember speaking to you, I think like 18 months ago or so, when we were talking about how it doesn't seem like this team that has the reigning MVP is on national TV enough. And, it seemed like they finally started to get their due on that this season. But he is really an interesting guy. In a way, he's a lot like Jimmy because he's a lunch pail. He's a lunch pail dude. He shows up to work, gives people the business, and goes straight home. He's a dude who loves horseback riding and, the outdoors. He's a family man.
It's hard to sell that though, Mateo.
It's hard to sell this. Why?
No, but it is. But that's the problem. This is the whole thing. And
because he's perfect.
George
That's why.
No, exactly. Well, Sadano and I talked about this a little bit about the responsibility of the national media to cover the story correctly. And there's that Chris Maddox clip that came out. I don't want to pick on one guy, but because I know Chris, but I'm just saying, like, it is interesting. Fans and media say they want something, but when they get it, they really wanted the other thing. They say they want the wholesome family man who horseback rides, but they don't know about what he's messing with, who he's messing with, any of that kind of stuff. They say that that's what they want. He doesn't curse. Jimmy's obviously a little different with the whole cursing part, but like he's just a wholesome. They don't want that. They don't want that.
Doesn't the Joker carry a little bit of a dirty player label? A little bit.
It's just on the court. It's just on the court. It's funny because you look at Luka, okay,
and his brothers.
His brothers are his brothers. But would you argue that Luka has a higher profile than Jokic? Does he not? Would we all argue?
No
that?
doubt. No doubt.
Okay.
No doubt.
What so let me ask you that. Why is that? Because we're talking about 2 European players, 2 white players. Let's just establish that. 2 European players, 2 white players, multi-skilled players. One was a second-round pick. One probably should have been the first pick, but wasn't. But he was a top 3 pick. Okay.
Right.
Why is it that Luka? Is it because he handles the ball on the perimeter and he scores more?
That does have a whole lot to do with it. But last time I checked, Dallas is a higher TV or a bigger TV market according to the Nielsen ratings
Mhm.
than Denver. And, there was a huge, debacle with, people can't, really watch the Nuggets unless they're paying an exorbitant price on things like Fubo TV. Like
Mm.
I paid like $300 for like a few months to watch the Nuggets on TV. It's money well spent because this is some of the best basketball I've ever seen. But that's really the case. There's you make a great point about being the ball handler. Big men are kind of like wide receivers in football where they're super dependent on the playmaker to give them the ball. It's a little different with Jokic because after a rebound, he could put the ball on the floor and take the ball up the court. But, I don't see him complain as much as he does sometimes, but I feel like it's a little bit more political with the refs. It's like he's trying to lobby them in between timeouts, and Luka just goes guns blazing verbally. And I know that could be attractive to certain people, but it is very interesting how one is certainly more popular than the other, and I think it's wrong because the other's the better player.
Yeah, he is the better player, and I don't, and not to take it away from Luka, who the Heat would take in an absolute heartbeat, but I don't think it's market size because I've never gotten the perception that Dallas is a huge market. I know in terms of population, and it's a huge market in terms of the Cowboys, but I've never gotten the sense that it's a huge market in terms of the Mavericks. Even when the Mavericks won, and even with Mark Cuban being the owner, even when the Mavericks won in 2011, they were the other team. In 2006 against the Heat, they were the other team, even when they had Dirk. So I don't know. And
Part of it
Miami's a
is the
smaller
Nuggets.
market than Dallas.
It's he's hurt because he's on the Denver Nuggets. Nobody watches the Denver Nuggets, and that's a problem right now. It hasn't historically always been a problem. There's been
But
a lot
Carmelo
of years.
Okay, but let's pivot there, and then I want to go to reasons to watch the series. Although we're kind of touching on that now because we're basically saying you're going to want to watch Nikola Jokic. Carmelo Anthony broke out, but is that because Carmelo was already a star before he came? He was the number 2 pick in the draft in the LeBron Wade Bosh draft. That's
Three.
why 3. I'm sorry. Sure. We all forget Darko. I'm sorry. I could tell so many stories about that whole scenario and Larry Brown and all the rest. But yes, and Joe Dumars. But you're right, number 3. But he won a national championship at Syracuse in 1 year. Is that the reason? Because he broke out.
This one for me.
Yeah.
That put, winning a title, especially like, the gauntlet that Melo went through in college to win, it certainly puts some national exposure on you. And here's the thing. A lot of people don't really remember the Nuggets were super bad before Melo came aboard. Like it was 2 years. They had won like 44 games and 17 1 year. And every year with him, they made the playoffs and they kind of capped out at a conference final. And then he decided to skip town. But, it feels like, the casual fan knows more about Melo's time with the Nuggets than Nikola Jokic's time. And this is what's happening now. It's like a cultural phenomenon, and I cannot explain it.
And look, they both wear the number 15, which probably Melo's number should have been, probably should have been given to Jokic. But again, you didn't expect Jokic to be this. He was a second-round pick. So, I mean, you award the guy's number not thinking that you're going to have your 2 best players potentially in franchise history. The funny thing about it is we talk about Melo, and maybe this is because of the Syracuse thing and winning a national championship. I did this a couple years ago, well, before Carmelo's decline. If you took the names away and the faces away and put Alex English's numbers next to Carmelo Anthony's numbers, they were exactly the same. Like every category, field goal percentage, free throw percentage, points per game. In fact, English's were a little better in some areas. It's just that Melo, again, had the higher profile before he went to Denver, and then he had a higher profile after he left Denver because he went to New York. But if Alex English played in New York, it might have been the same thing as Carmelo Anthony. I don't want to spend too much time on Carmelo. I just think the whole Jokic thing is fascinating to me because, again, this is a failure of the NBA, and it's a failure, which is the league that markets its players the best, by the way, of all of them. Much better than MLB, clearly. I mean, Mike Trout could walk down the street. Nobody would know who he is. He's been the best player in baseball for 10 years. But this is a failure of the NBA, and it's a failure of the rights holders of the NBA, whether it's ESPN or TNT, to properly promote, put on their network, and talk about a guy who has basically dominated the league in the past 3 seasons. It's to me, it's a failure. And now they're stuck playing catch up in this series where they shouldn't be playing catch up. And that's just the way that I view it. And, we're not getting into legacy talk on Nikola Jokic yet, although that'll come if the Heat win this series. We'll say, is he ever going to win one? He's got all these MVPs. He's never going to win one. All right, we do want to mention a couple spots for the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and then we're going to give you some other reasons to watch this series beyond Nikola Jokic. We mentioned our guy, Arash. If you need a mortgage, reach out to mortgagebyarash.com. you need a quick purchase these days, right? You see a house, you want the house, but we know what mortgage rates are, what, 85% now? No, not quite that high, but about 7%. You want to find somebody who can get you competitive rates, can get you down payment options as low as 3%, and can get you fast closings, most in less than 20 days. And also, you can help you even if you don't have the best credit score. Credit score is starting at 620. First-time homeowner buyer, first-time homeowner buyer, home buyer programs available, and borrower assistance programs available to help with down payment and closing costs. Reach out to our guy Arash, another big Miami sports fan. So many of our sponsors are, including the Miami Heat. So definitely check him out at mortgagebyarash.com. That's mortgagebyarash.com. And I'm going to give you the phone number. He's based in the Sunrise area, right down the street from the Eastern Conference champion Florida Panthers. So reach out to Arash. He can service you for the entire area. 954 651 2057. That's 954 651 2057. And one other thing we do want to mention, our two sponsors, Fantasy and Gambling. We've got big stuff coming up on Thursday in advance of Game 1. So check it out. You're going to want to be subscribed to Prize Picks using the code 5. Not only do we get your initial deposit matched up to $100, but in concert with NBA Central, we're going to be giving away $150 in promo funds. So Prize Picks, use the code 5, F-I-V-E. And when you do that, not only, again, will you get the match that you want to get, but you'll also get you'll also get registered potentially for promo funds. And also Better Edge, use the code 5RSN. That's the code 5RSN at betteredge.com. And that's where you can gamble legally because you're playing against other players who use it. You're not playing against the app or the book itself. Go to Better Edge, and we're running contests there as well, and we'll have special giveaways too. So betteredge.com, 5RSN, Prize Picks, use the code 5, F-I-V-E. All right, more reasons to watch. Other than let's do this rapid fire. We're gonna go around the corner, and you got to come up with one. Okay, we got to come up with one. Okay, okay, go. Okay, I'll give you the easiest reason for this. To me, the reason to watch this series is I love the style contrast. I think the style contrast is fascinating. I think you have a team in the Heat that wants to grind this thing into the dirt, and the team in Denver that doesn't let you do that. And I think that if you look at a chess match, I think to me, these are the two most underrated coaches in the entire NBA. I think they have been for a long time. Malone versus Spoelstra, to me, is really interesting. There are things that Spo was able to do against a rookie neophyte head coach in Missoula. He's not going to be able to do against Malone, no matter how good he is. Things he's done against guys like Doc Rivers, things he's done against even Bud. I think Malone's going to be up for a lot of that challenge. I see Malone as a better tactician than a lot of the guys that we've seen. I love the style contrast. Greg, yours.
Oh, you know where I'm going. This is a Jimmy Butler moment, and I'm looking for as many Jimmy Butler moments as I can get. There's been so many great ones throughout the playoffs, and I feel like these finals, Jimmy got this far. I just don't see him losing. And that's just how I feel about this series. And so that for me, and I know that I'm biased because I'm obviously the Heat, the biggest Heat fan, but I would think that everyone in the country, it's a very different Heat team. You know, I saw on SportsCenter, they said that Heat culture is real. And they showed a picture of Jimmy Butler. And I thought about how much different people would look at this lunch pail team than they did the big three. Mm-hmm. And just what a contrast it is, but how the culture has been interwoven throughout both of those things. It's just is a huge element for me. And so Jimmy Butler is the reason number one to watch these NBA finals.
Mateo, give us a reason we haven't covered.
Well, you know, I think Bill Simmons, I hate to give him credit, was spot on with that zombie comparison. Yeah, they are like George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. They refuse to go down. They beat the team that they were expected to lose against. Milwaukee, the first seed, they won a game 5 on the road. Those are tough to do. I know Giannis only played at 38% of the minutes, but you play who's in front of you. But what's been the most impressive is they flipped the script on their production. They're one of the 3 worst outside shooting teams in the regular season. And in the playoffs, they have been the number 1 outside shooting team. It's like when they were put in the play-in game against Chicago, they were pretty much with their backs against their wall, and their basketball character shined through. And now they're pretty much 4 wins away from an NBA title, their 7th trip to the championship round since 2006, which is a whole lot, by the way. It really shows that they are like the model of consistency. But more important, you know, they refuse to go down. That's really captivating for sure.
And I'll close it here. I want to thank our sponsors, Prize Picks, Better Edge. Enter those tournaments, mortgagebyrush.com, ubreakwheelfix.com. We'll have playback coming up on Thursday night. I'll be at the arena with Mateo. We'll have coverage from there. Greg, Brady, Alex, Gabe, they'll all be on I can't say Gabe, I'm sorry, Eternal. The rest of them, they'll all be on playback. Ben, everybody, the whole crew. Sean will be involved. Fonseca will be cursing. We'll have everything going on, and then of course a post-game show afterwards, which Greg is gonna handle there. I'll close with one more thing. I love when there's a potential for breakout stars. Like what we saw with Caleb Martin last series was really freaking cool. It was. And it feels like there's a chance for another. Is it Gabe Vincent in this series? Is it Max Strus, who seemed to kind of turn things around as the series went on? Is it a continued kind of development of Duncan Robinson into this playoff monster after everything that he's had to deal with? Or on the Denver side, I know, Mateo, you love Bruce Brown. Okay. And I feel like these are guys going to get paid, obviously, but is a really intriguing player. I've always admired Jeff Green as a player. Okay. And he's part of that mix with Denver, just how he's hung in as long as he's hung in. I'm not saying he's going to be a star in this series, but also and this will irritate Heat fans. Jamal Murray's really freaking good. And I don't feel like most of the country realizes that.
Yeah.
And he's just a smooth, fun player to watch who is clutch as hell. I like this series a lot. I think it's going 7. I do. I think this is a 7-game series. I know everybody wants me to make a pick so that I can be wrong.
No.
We're going to have parades on Las Olas Boulevard and Biscayne Boulevard. Have a good night, everybody.
Wow.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Regional Sports Network.